This is a quick edited demo of the painting of Laugharne Castle that I did recently for the wonderfully named Watercolour Challenged in South Wales. As with all my paintings, I try to make them simple. I try to make them very wet. I use as few brushstrokes as possible. Once I've touched the paper, there's no real reason to be touching it again unless I'm seeking a different effect. So the background is just simple sky blending into a simple greenish colour for the background vegetation and a greyish colour for the castle. And then this at the bottom is just the greenery in front of the castle. Now once that first wash is dry, that little bit of background, distant shore, I put that in very simply, just leaving the original colour below. And then it's on to isolating the castle to a certain extent. So I'm using a much darker green. Greens are all made from ultramarine, and the yellows that I use, either a warm or cold yellow, doesn't really matter which. And I can always strengthen the green even more simply by using more pigment, not less water, more pigment, and even maybe with the addition of a little bit of ultramarine into it. And that gives me a nice range of greens that I just allow them all to blend together. Just softening the edges a little bit here and there so that the trees don't have that sharp edge all the way around, because that doesn't really make sense. On to the castle now, and I've got the outline of the castle on the right because I have the dark behind it, so I've used negative painting there, but here I'm using positive painting, so I'm painting the actual castle. I don't want it to get dark the whole way across, so I fade that darker tone out as I go across to the right hand side, so I still have that nice light against dark background on the right hand side. Then carrying down seamlessly with the vegetation that is covering the castle walls, and finishing off with a fairly fine edge. There's a little walkway there, and I want to create the sense of the walkway just by leaving a little gap really in the wash. So I'm leaving some of that original first wash visible. And then in the foreground vegetation, a little bit of side dry brush, just to create the effect of the reeds that are growing there in profusion. And a few squiggles. It's always difficult to know how much to do with foreground grasses. So I want to do enough to sort of suggest the grass, but not too much. Back into the background and just reinforcing that a little bit, just to suggest some of those distant fields. It's important not to do too much, because what I don't want to happen is for this to come forward. And then a little bit of darkening at the bottom of the water there, really just to show up the water. That's the main purpose of that slightly darker green. So an awful lot of these adjustments that I'm making are not because of that's what the actual landscape looks like. It's so as to improve the painting. So it's to increase the tonal variety, that sort of thing in the painting, which is exactly what I'm doing here with the trees. So I'm trying to create some variety within the trees rather than just have a sort of flat blended tree mass. I'm sort of trying to create the suggestion of a few trees in front of trees. And really the same thing with the castle, adding a few little stronger indications just to bolster the suggestion of the castle. And on with the vegetation. And again, pretty much the same thing. I'm just darkening parts of this vegetation to create variety. It's all about creating variety and creating interest. And I do that both with variation in colour and also variation in tone. I jump around quite a bit, so I'll do a little bit of all the parts in my painting, and then I'll do a little bit more and a little bit more. And eventually, of course, with each section, I'll stop at a certain point. And I find that's much better than working a single part of the painting to a finish, because I can continually compare one part of the painting with another. A couple of little figures are always useful, both to give a sense of scale, and also because generally there are figures in our landscape, especially a landscape like this. And so the figures add human interest to it. They give a focal point. The figure will always be the focal point. And I'm aiming here just really to get the proportions of the figures, the legs in proportion to the body, things like that. I'm not thinking about detail in any way whatsoever, because the figures are much, much too far away. That's pretty much it. I hope you have enjoyed this little quick demo of Laugharne Castle in South Wales.